Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Spencer. I work as part of the business change team on the Bus Open Data Service or BODS admin team. My role is mainly to look after the data consumers, who I assume to be pretty much all of you, and making your lives nice and easy. So with me are some other members of the team, namely Tess, who is the business change lead. Do you want to say a quick hello?
Hi everyone. So I'm not a few familiar faces, a few new faces, which is always really exciting. I'm Tess, the business change lead, and really that's just trying to make sure the industry is making the adjustments so that we can really get the full benefit realization from the world of bus open data.
Cheers. So today we're going to showcase a tool that we built and decided to share with the community for extracting and working with all of the data on BODS. So to start with, the agenda. So I'll give a bit of a background on BODS and the package. I'll talk about the functionality and what it does overall. We'll give you a tour of the public GitHub repository. I'll go into a bit of a demo of some of the more basic features that the tool can do, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. I'll keep this fairly brief in terms of backgrounds about BODS, because I'm sure most of you are veterans of the industry, but there may be some new people here. So BODS is it stands for Bus Open Data Service, and essentially what it is a open central data platform where English bus operators need to publish their data. So that's namely their timetables data, the live location of their vehicles on the road, and their fares. The current state is there's a huge amount of open and standardized public data ripe and ready for people to use for whatever they want, research, entertainment, or commercial. On the timetable side, there's around 950 data sets published last time I checked, and that doesn't even account for the live locations and the fares. So there's a huge amount out there, giving you a full picture of kind of the industry at the moment, and there's loads of stuff you can do with it. But a problem we found, particularly for new joiners of the program and the project, was that the data can actually be quite difficult to work with at times. The XML file structure that it's stored in is efficient. It leads to low storage costs, but this is at the cost of simplicity. So it can be quite difficult to actually wrangle that data and get a timetable out of a timetable file, for example. And you need to put in some significant time or have some existing significant technical knowledge to really know how to generate that clean and analytical data, as we call it, to really start working with the files on there. So that led us to creating the bods-data-extractor package. And essentially it is a Python package, so just a pre-built tool that we've released and allows us to kind of do these five things. So the first one is we wanted repeatable basic tasks to be able to be done. So it was originally an internal tool for sort of tactical analysis. For example, if we wanted to know how many bus operators have published their data this month, rather than having to write custom code every time we wanted to answer this question, we'd write it once and then just be able to repeat it, and that makes it much easier to track these changes over time, especially for basic questions. We want these repeatable tasks to be able to extract the data from the file. So like I said, XML is a complicated file structure. It's a good skill to learn, and those who don't know it, I do encourage you to learn it in tech, but ultimately it's a barrier to entry, a steep learning curve. And we wanted to remove the necessity for our team members and our users to learn how to work with XML and just start getting straight into the data. We wanted to be able to do these two things on kind of custom slices of the data, so make it really easy to work with certain subsections of data rather than having to download everything in one go and filter after. You can just look at the data that you want and run those repeatable tasks like answering those basic questions. It lets us use an existing BODS API client to save users from writing query strings and ourselves. So Query strings is just another thing to learn, or what we're calling a barrier to entry for using the BODS data. And if we can lower these barriers to entry, we can hopefully make the BODS platform easier to use for the community and for ourselves. So in lowering that barrier to entry for ourselves, we wanted to kind of share that and hopefully get more people using the BODS platform. Finally, to caveat, I do want to say that this is just kind of an exploratory tool. We're aware of improvements that need to be made and that we can make, and we'll be continuing to update it over time with feedback from consumers and from the industry. I'll take a quick pause for any questions or points anyone wants to raise. Hand up from Callum. Go ahead, Callum.
Hi. Yeah, I was just wondering, how long do we expect this tool to be maintained for? Is this long term, as long as BODS is existing, or is this something you'll get to a certain stage and you'll stop maintaining, or what's the sort of road plan for this?
It's a good question. So currently, the existing contract is until May.
Okay.
But we would love to be able to continue that for as long as possible. But beyond May, I can't really give a definitive answer at the moment, I'm afraid.
If it is longer term, will you say so in like the emails that you release? I'm just thinking if there are bugs and stuff or ideas that we've got, obviously, it'd be nice to know if they might have a chance of being implemented.
Yeah, we'll definitely plan on being as open as possible when it comes to things like that.
Cool. Cheers.
Another hand up from Sharon.
Hi, thanks. Just a quick question around the data model. Are we agreeing what is the best practice to share a general data model that everyone can use?
Sorry, could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so when you are exposing these APIs, you will have certain fields which is already defined. But if you need additional stuff, which currently is a big barrier, for example, there's no reference to bus stop in terms of where the bus references are. So how do you sort of take those feedback and incorporate those in the APIs?
So there's kind of two things happening here, really. We've got the central BODS platform, where you can request features for the API through the help desk, and there's links to that on the repo on the GitHub, but I can take you through that as well. If you want a change to the core API, I'd encourage you to raise a request there, and that's where we'll raise it with the team. And then this is a separate tool which just makes it kind of easier to use the API and gather the information. And you can also raise requests for that, but they are slightly different things. This is largely limited to what is available in the API, and you can request changes to this. But also, if it's about the core BODS platform, then I'd encourage you to go to the BODS help desk.
It's just worth saying as well, the reason for having an API as well as this package is that BODS itself was originally commissioned to be essentially an indexing tool, which is why the API outputs in the way it does. Hence the need for an additional package to make it easier to work with for analysis.
Exactly. Thank you, Lexi. So next, I'll talk a bit about what in terms of a high level, what the package actually does. So normally, as a user or a consumer, you'll write a query string, send a request to the BODS API. The API will then return some information about the relevant data sets, and in that information is a link to actually download the data in that data set. It will either be a zip file or you can or XML files, but if you unzip it, it'll be full of XML. And after some inevitable Googling of how to parse XML files and digesting the data standards document, you'll eventually be able to get the information on that bus service or the actual timetable. And this full cycle is what I was talking about in terms of needing quite a bit of upskilling and time investment. So the Python package kind of abstracts a lot of that away from the user and lets you focus on requesting the data that you want. It will go to the API, download, unzip, and pass the XML, and then you can focus on the data about that bus service or also the timetable. So, like I said, we post everything on our public GitHub. So I'll give you a quick tour of what that looks like here, and we'll post a link to it in the chat as well. So there's a few things I want to point out. The main thing, the first thing, is the README file. So this is where we've put pretty much all of our documentation and as much info as we hope you'll need to get started and using the functionality of the package. As we bring new features on, we'll be updating this, and we're constantly trying to make it, as easy to read as possible. We've got a table of contents where you can click down to whatever section is relevant to you. The getting started section starts you off from the basics, so even downloading a distribution of Python, how to get your API key, super easy, but there's a step there as well. Quick reference guides, some examples of what to expect in terms of output at the various levels of data that you can kind of request from the package, but I'll go into that in a bit more detail in a minute. And then we've also got some example code. So if you are struggling to get started, you can just copy and paste this into your machine, and you've got some code that works to start with, and then build upon whatever you want to do on top of that. Finally, in the README section, we've got a kind of roadmap and limitations section. So this is where we document the areas that we want to improve or features that we want to bring in, and as we sort of overcome some of these hurdles, we'll update this section to reflect that. Finally, we've got our open issues section. So this is where you can actually see the things we are currently working on. So as you can see at the moment, it's a lot of extensive updating to the documentation, but there's other features and bugs that we're working on at the moment. So that's all public and available for you to see what we're currently working on and trying to get done in the near future. And this is all public and based around community involvement, so anyone can submit an issue. We've got a few templates to start with, so you can report a bug. If you want to do that, there's a template to guide you on what info to put in. There's also a feature request template for requesting new features that you want to see that would help your use case. And for the more security inclined, there's also vulnerability reports that you can add. If any of these templates don't suit your use case, then you can open up a blank issue as well, and do something a bit more custom. So that's a quick tour of the GitHub. I think we put it in the chat. So do have a look at that. The source code is in the source folder and bods-data-extractor, so you can have a look through there. So next up, I will give a quick demo of the tool and what some of the basic functionality is. I've not done my rain dance to the demo gods today, so there may be some issues, but we can overcome that if they do pop up. But if you don't have it installed, it's as simple as pip install bods-data-extractor. You can do this in the console, you can do this in Jupyter's Notebook, as I've done here. I've obviously got it installed already, so it's just going to say that this is already satisfied, but it should just install the package and all of the relevant dependencies that you need. We'll import the relevant packages here, which would normally be your start point. And then the first step is always to get your API key and save that to a variable. So that's super easy to do. You just go on the BODS website. If you sign in and go to the account section, your API key will be there. But again, there is guidance for that in the README file. So we'll use the timetable extractor to actually get info on bus services. So now's a good chance for me to talk about the 3 levels of granularity that we have for the data. So the lowest level we have is what we call the metadata, which is just basic information about the data set that that you're looking at. So if I go to if you go to the bus open data service page again, if we look at find bus open data, browse data, and then in this case we're looking at timetables. This is the kind of what I call the BODS UI. So you can manually look through all the data sets here. If I just click on this first one, this is an example of what we call the metadata. So it's just basic high-level information about the data set. So the data set ID, the trans-exchange version that it's published in, the earliest start date, some bus routes, national operator code, etc. So if you want to just use the metadata, this is a great way of getting a very high-level overview of lots of data sets on BODS without manually clicking through hundreds or thousands of data sets and without hammering the UI with algorithms. The next level down is the service level. So this is information about the actual bus service. So I've got an example of an XML file here. So if you've not seen this before, it will look quite nasty, which is exactly the reason we built a package like this. But stuff like service code here, you won't normally see this on the BODS UI. So this is where the package starts to take some real time savings for you and pulls out things like the service code and line name and operating periods. And we tell the code essentially that we want the service level by setting the service line level flag to true when we use timetable extractor. And finally, the next level down is the stop level. So that's where we're actually going in and calculating actual timetables. Not sure do we have a question, or is that background noise? Happy to pause for questions if anyone's got any now.
Might also just be worth at this point sort of saying that this is really an exploratory tool we use within the business change team, and that we want to obviously get lots of feedback from everyone and see how we can improve it, because what you need is what we need to do as well. So we're very much driven by the consumers, but from a maintenance perspective, this will need to be something that's also balanced out with the kind of other duties within the change team, which can kind of range from sort of hand-holding operators, onboarding and improving data quality and all of that kind of stuff as well. So just to kind of make sure all of our expectations are slightly aligned as we're going through it.
Cheers. Yeah, exactly. We're balancing this with our other roles, and we do want this to be as helpful as possible. But we are keen for feedback, and we want this to be useful for us and you as well.
Yeah, like a springboard type concept. From here we want you to springboard, take the concept, lift and shift it into a way that's going to really support you in your products, services, or hobbies.
Cool. So I'll crack on. The stop level info. If we set that to true, that's where we start getting the actual timetables, and I'll show you that after. So an example of this running. So I've set the limit to 5. So we're not going to download 900 data sets live because that will take too long. But it gives you a bit of an update about what it's doing at the moment and which data set it's currently downloading and trying to unpack. If there's any issues with URLs or data sets, it'll tell you here. So that's run all good, fortunately. And we can take a look at an example of some of the metadata that that gets printed out. So we've got the dataset ID, for example, the URL that it's downloaded from, operator name, a description about the dataset, again, the national operator codes. So again, just high level info there. Next down is the service line info. So again, we've got all of the stuff from the metadata, dataset ID, operator name, but then we've got some more detailed info. So we've split out the bus line names here, which is what you would expect to see on the front of the bus. And then service code, which is more to do with the registration of the service. Where did it come from? Where did it go? The operating period, start date, the revision number of the file, which can be a useful one so that we know that this is the kind of 21st revision of that file since the operator has uploaded it. Very basic kind of counting of how many operators in this service line extract to see if that was useful for us earlier on, just to see, how many operators have published at this moment in time. And then finally, we can set stop level to true to actually extract the timetable. Now this is quite performance intensive, so we definitely recommend to set the limit to something low, like 1 to 10 tops really. And this does take a while, so I've got a pre-finished one from earlier, and this is the kind of format that the timetables come out in. So again, dataset ID, service code, line name, revision number. But then we've got bits about the actual stop. So the sequence in the route that stop is, the unique stop code, the common name for that bus stop, latitude and longitudes if you want to put that, visualize that on a map, and then actual vehicle journeys as following kind of the journey of a bus along the specified timetable. Again, another caveat is we've had feedback, and this actual structure of timetables, the way it's presented at the moment, is less than ideal. So we are working on improving this specifically as well, getting a better way of viewing them. But essentially, that's a quick demo of the way it works. There's more examples again on the README file. This is the kind of this is our Bible in terms of where to find information and how it all works. But that's pretty much all I've got to talk about today for now. More than happy to do a kind of Q&A session. We've got some time, so. Sharon, thanks for putting your hand up. Do you want to kick us off?
Yes, thank you again. I've seen there was a bus stop code. Is this referencing to a standard bus stop location ID or something?
Yeah, that's the bus stop code as you'll find it in the NAPTAN database, okay, which is for those who don't know, is the kind of national database of all bus stops.
Okay, so that's related, so it should directly become a foreign key.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
And it in fact does call the NAPTAN API in the background to get I think it's the latitude and longitudes from the code. The code is in the XML file, and then it calls the NAPTAN API to get the extra info like the common name. But that you'll be able to find it in the NAPTAN database from what's there. Callum.
Just two questions really. One was about that timetable view. I was just wondering what you were changing about it, because I'd had a look in the past, and this was a while ago, so I don't know if it's changed since then. And it seemed that inbound and outbound journeys were all mixed together. I didn't know if that was what was changing on this. Part of the view was splitting those out, or it was something different. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so that's one of them, and I think that was one of the main bits that was causing confusion when we first released, because inbound and outbound are kind of joined together there, and that's sort of reflected, I think, in the sequence number, but that is not clear. So we do have an open issue on the GitHub about how we expect it to look, where I've kind of, I think we should split the inbound and the outbound tables, and then we're also going to incorporate the operating days. So some of them might be Monday to Friday, some might be weekend services. I think those are also in there at the moment as well. So there's quite a big update in terms of how those timetables are displayed coming. And if you have a dig on the issues, you'll see what the plan is, and you're more than welcome to give suggestions if you think that there's another way of doing things.
And just, if you don't mind, a unrelated question. Obviously, I don't know about everyone else, but the timetables is one of the things that I'm after the most from these data sets, and particularly, timetables either for a service as a whole or as a single stop. What are some of the ways, as you said, the processing time of this is quite lengthy. What are the ways that we can slice some of this to, let's say, look just for a specific stop or a specific service without having to? Because obviously you said we could limit them, but obviously that's an integer. Is there a way to limit to service codes or something?
Yeah. So I don't think you can limit service code specifically just yet in searching for the data, but you can filter on NOC, National Operator Code. You can search for a specific, you can search for the name of a operator. And that's, to be honest, off the top of my head, that's what I can remember right now. But there's more. Again, there's always answers in the README. But you can, for now, I can definitely tell you that NOC and operator name are searchable fields.
Okay. Cheers.
No worries. Sabas, I think you were next.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for doing this. I've been actually using it quite a bit lately, this API. And I guess I can follow up from what Callum said. You can look up with ADCO codes. So I'm using specific area codes found in that CSV. I guess, yeah, Ali just mentioned local authority code that you can check up and filter your results. One of the questions is, as Callum said, if you go to that timetable thing and all of the inbound and outbound are mixed together, but sometimes all of these data have duplicates. Is there a reason for those data? Does the operator give you that data so you don't have access to them? Or is that all coming from operator side? And how is that kind of like, can you change that, or is it something not you have hold of?
So my initial thought is that what we notice is the duplicates. You may notice that there might be a duplicate stop, kind of a duplicate row for stops, but the sequence number might be different. That's one of the first things we noticed when it comes to inbound and outbound being in one table. It might look like a duplicate, but the sequence number is different. And if you look at the vehicle journeys, then some vehicle journeys don't go to that sequence number. It's possible that it comes from the data, but it's hard to tell kind of right now. But that's something we're always looking at, kind of data quality, always trying to improve, whether it's on our side or working with the operators.
Okay, and maybe just one quick more. Is it possible, there was a way there to see maybe the starting date or something? Is it possible to look back or further ahead? Or is it just what you can get now from the API?
So there are, I think it's mostly what's on there now. I think you can look back to a certain point. I'm not sure, but we're mostly interested in the kind of relevant and up-to-date and timely data that is on BODS. So that's where the focus is at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So wanting to mainly surface the published data sets, where that's the kind of indicator to anybody calling the API. If it's a published data set, that's live, should be considered and is part of what the bus operator wants you to digest.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, Keith. I think you're next.
Yeah, I suppose the first thing I want to say is to congratulate you on what you've achieved so far. The main reason being is I know from when we started working with this data, we were finding it quite challenging to get people who enthusiastically leapt into using XML data, or even had lots of prior knowledge about using it, because it is quite a dated thing. Whereas I'm finding now you've translated it into Python scripts, the kind of knowledge base and the people who can use them is much wider. So in some respects, you've done a lot to make it more accessible. I think what we've found the most challenging, though, is we've been doing a lot of cross-referencing timetables to actually bus movements. And there's a few things we've done post-processing that make that cross-referencing a lot easier. But maybe it'd take quite a long, detailed discussion with yourselves to work out whether there's a way of incorporating that into the data so it can be used by others as well. Because I think there'd be a lot of knowledge gained if we could have more sense of how you cross-reference timetable to actual bus data, which is in itself quite challenging. We're doing it particularly to not actually understand the performance of the buses, it's to understand the performance of the road network in how it services buses and how it either helps or hinders the running of bus reliability. But I'm sure there's lots of other applications. So maybe at some point it'd be good to have a longer discussion about, you know, maybe some extra tasks you might do to make that easier for others as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd be more than happy to put some time in your diary and we can have a proper chat about that, because my role is to work with the data consumers and take their feedback and see what improvements we can bring on. Yeah.
Do you think, yeah, just to add to that, Keith, so one thing we really want to have is, you know, where anyone's getting a good insight or finds a problem or thinks of a way of doing it better, you know, we all agree it would be a good step forward. We want that to be fed back actually to the operators as well. So we do have feedback mechanisms that if you see something, you know, maybe that through your post-processing that you're having to do certain adjustments to match the data, for example, there's actually probably a source problem in the source data that actually that's the problem we really want to fix. We understand that there's a lot of business value in being able to do enhancements and absolutely go and make that value 100%, but we really kind of have this ethos that we want things to be right at source so that everything that's dependent on that, including the single source of truth from BODS is used. But to do that, we kind of have two methods. We have a kind of more detailed method where, you know, Spencer, me, or some of us from the team will sit down and we'll brainstorm and work through it really in a lot of detail with the consumers. But we also have feedback functionality that we'd really like the consumers to use to say, oh, operator, I've actually seen your direction ref in your Siri VM is the wrong one. Would you mind fixing it? We really do need everyone to be helping out a bit because that's how the scale kind of works. If that makes sense. Yeah,
and I think there's a few things we can feed back as detailed queries within your GitHub query, but I think there's quite a few where maybe a longer discussion between our team, who I've noticed a few are on the call today, and your team might help to get a mutual understanding of which ones are easy to do and which ones, as you say, are a bit more long time consuming and are a problem with the source data as it's being created. Yeah, and then feed that back to the whole community.
Absolutely. And we're in the background at the moment working and testing a bit of code that basically can be picked up by a consumer and used by a consumer in Python to automate their feedback back to operators as well. So we're thinking about, how do we do this in an efficient way for everybody. We're testing it now, though. We will give it out when it's a bit further down the testing road.
But overall, my thought is thanks for the big step forward, because it's made it a lot easier. But I think there's a few more other things hopefully you can do before your contract finishes, but they might help get a future one as well.
Well, I think there's going to be another contract. So if it's not me and Spencer, it'll be someone even better.
Next question, I think, was from Alan.
Hi, just a quick question around, I seem to recollect reading that from this month, it will be mandatory for bus operators to submit their data. Could you just confirm that's still in place?
Yes, that's absolutely still in place.
Excellent.
Yeah, the deadlines have gone. There is one exception to that, which is complex fares data. So in the regulation, operators have to supply timetables, real-time location AVL, and fares, where fares is split into simple and complex. Simple, the deadline has passed, and we're doing a push on that at the moment. We've seen an increase, I think, in around 10 operators in the last week since we've started that. We expect for that to really galvanize over the coming month. And yeah, there will be also more engagement from those who haven't yet been able to onboard, and a bit more pressure applied, I think.
Okay, so just to follow up then, for those instances where operators haven't met the deadlines, will that prompting come from you, or will it come from I work for the local authority? I'm not in the transport team. I'm data, so I'm just making sure I know where we are.
There is a slight thing of the more the merrier, because the ones that are left might not fully understand or understand how many people are really interested in this data and the power of it. So the more people asking for it, kind of the clearer it is to the operator. Officially, the operators that are having sort of sticking points, maybe struggling with the technology, we've got a whole bunch that are working with us. So we're, hand-holding them through it, getting them set up with suppliers. They'll work with the business change team. So all those that are willing, we are here to support. So when me and Spencer say, this will be maintained while we're here as a package, we're also doing things like that as well. So just to kind of give you the breadth of the responsibility we have.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Thank you.
But there will be engagement for those who are unwilling to work with people like me and Spencer. Will be engaged by the enforcement agency, which is the DVSA.
Okay, thank you.
Manuel, thanks for waiting. What's your question?
Thank you. First, congratulations for your presentation. So I think that this is a very interesting, let's say, service to provide to the society, and which very good benefit. So my question is, maybe is in the roadmap. So, but I would like to ask about that. Is there any way to obtain, let's say, live information about where the buses are? So I think that the operators could send that as timetables, but is there any way to obtaining the real, let's say, deviation between what is in the timetables against what's happening in the reality?
Yeah, so there is a AVL or live vehicle location API on BODS. That's not currently implemented in the package, but we do have plans to get that in. The second part of your question about kind of timetable deviation, that's kind of more to do with matching the AVL to the timetables, which at the moment again isn't done automatically by the package. There is documentation to guide you on what fields to match the two data sets on. So it is possible at the moment, but that kind of requires you as the user to attempt that.
Just on that note as well, there is a specific matching guide which you can find on the GitHub alongside the other data standards. We are working with the operators. We know that not all operators are quite following that guide to the extent that we need them to. And in the next release of the Bus Open Data Service, which is the 1.22 release, operators will be given feedback in a kind of sample way of how well their timetable schedules match their real-time location feeds. So I think there's kind of 6 or 7 key identifiers, things like knocks, lines, direction ref, things like that, that help you match those. And we're going to be feeding back in the instances where those aren't aligning. So we're expecting the ability to match to seriously improve once that feedback starts hitting the industry. One thing on it, the feedback will take a little longer than usual for the operators to turn around, because it's talking both about the schedules and the AVL. Sometimes they come from different suppliers, so there's a little bit more that has to be done to make sure those 2 data sources are aligning and able to match. But we will expect a big improvement in matching from that feature.
Okay, thank you very much. Just last question, quick one. So is there any expected, let's say, deadline for this, for having the live data? So do you have that in mind?
Yeah, the statutory deadline. So all of this is underpinned by regulations from the government, has already passed. So we do expect operators to be already providing us that data. So we would, if there are any, we really are trying to onboard those final operators and get them set up with the right kit. We do see AVL as a slightly harder thing for the operators to do when they're really small, because timetables and fares you can do for free, and we can help you. Where AVL does require a third-party supply solution, hardware, and a little bit more from the operator. So yeah, we will be working on getting that up to, well, near as 100% as we can.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Manuel. Next question. I'm afraid your name only comes up starting with 390, but do you have a question for us?
Hello, sorry, I think that might be me because I signed in on a different Eventbrite. It's Gavin here. Yeah, just following on from the previous question. First of all, thank you very much for doing this. I was playing around with the live data for about a week before I realised that this was going on, and you had this client. I've got a very specific need, believe it or not, for public signage, and I want to make an app for a signpost at it's a football club where it's fed by a park and ride system, and we get a lot of away fans who don't know the ground, and they're all asking for when's the next bus back to the station, basically. So I've got a very specific route. I've managed to get the mapping working off the live data. That actually works quite well. But where I come to a bit of a brick wall was with the timetable data, because I was expecting, you could download and just find the times, but it seems to be it's calculated on the fly, isn't it, by the route segments and all that. So what my specific point I'd like to make really is, if you go to most bus stops nowadays, they've got electronic signage, haven't they, with the next bus route due and the next time, expected time. What would be great would just be like a function like that, where you could recreate that data per stop. So I've got a very specific stop and specific route numbers. If you could generate that that data in one function, that would be absolutely brilliant.
I think that's useful to a few people, and it is in our issues at the moment as sort of part of our roadmap to be able to sort of answer some of those more specific questions. What buses stop at this stop, or what are the routes for this bus at this stop, etc.
Okay, thank you.
But our emails, if you can see them, are in the chat. Please do reach out to Spencer, and we will dedicate time to that and understanding it a bit more.
Yeah, thanks. I'll send you the link of what I've got so far, and I'll show you my specific use case. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thanks, Gavin. Callum, you're up.
So, repeat customer. So it was just coming off the back of what you said, Tess, about. So one of the things I do, I work for the local authority, is the bus punctuality review or reliability review. And so we've switched over to using the AVL data for the last 2 years. And one of the things, getting the AVL data is great. That's fantastic. The whole county is covered, click of a button. The difficulty comes, as you've said, aligning the timetable data that we hold to the live location. And so that takes days. So we've automated lots of it, but there's still a long way to go. And so I was keen to hear about what you said about reporting back to the industry in terms of, how well they match, because I find none of our operators in our area, nothing matches at all. So I tend to match by the sort of origin time, and that tends to be put into the SiriusVM feed. And that works well, but I was keen to know if what the sort of level of matching between the AVL and the timetables would be released to the public, or is that going to only go to the operators?
So yes, we think alike. If I'd been the decision maker, it would have been released to everyone at the same time. But I think that's why I cause so much trouble. So no, it's going to the operators first for a few months, but in 3 months, I think we're going to release it to the consumers as well. So you'll know the same indicator that the operator has, which is the sample matching. I think it's just to give the operators enough time to really sort of pivot. I think this is going to be really a supplier question in many cases.
Yeah.
And when it's more to do with the supplier rather than just the operator using the software correctly, it tends to need to be prioritized into some dev work with the supplier, obviously tested, deployed, and then the users need to be kind of retrained.
Yeah. And
when that happens, it's always a couple of months at least to really see the tide turning. So we're just giving them a bit of extra time, but you will see it. You will absolutely see it.
No, that's good. Thank you.
And we can release some information on the fields that are being kind of analysed in that, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that would be useful. Thank you.
Cool. Manuel, I see your hand is still up. Do you have another question, or is that an old one?
No, it was because of the first one, so I just get it.
Cool.
Thanks.
No worries. Oh, we've got a question on the chat. I want to ask about live data feed, if there will be a delay in buses being provided in the real-time feed. So I think is that about like predictions and delays, disruption information. I'm not quite. Yes. Okay. Cool. So at the moment, you would need to kind of calculate your own schedule adherence. But I think there is plan for a disruptions tool to come along, be released to the BODS platform, but it's early days. That's still in the kind of user research phase at the moment. So there's plans for it at the moment, but I'm not quite sure on the horizons for that at the moment.
Maybe I will answer this question. So we as the suppliers, we literally started on the user research and development of the disruptions tool, which would be the open data tool for any local authority or different hierarchy, i.e. local authority and local bus operators, to put disruptions on the tool and expose it in the SiriusX format. This tool will allow consumers to access it via API initially, and the plans are to integrate it with BODS platform and access it from BODS platform. The current timescales, but anything can go wrong, but current timescales is for this tool to be released by the end of May, beginning of June. If there is a huge desire to produce or consume disruptions tool closer to date, please do give us, contact us, and we'll just update you somewhere in April, May, whether there are any potential delays, but we are aiming to release the tool for local authorities to use the end of May, beginning of June.
Thanks, Eva.
And regarding predictions, this is something which is definitely not a part of the current scope, current contract. I think that quite a lot of thoughts needs to be put into this, whether there should be a central storage of predictions available, or whether this should be generated by the market. We absolutely have not, as the team, as the BODS team, have not looked into this any closer. So should there be any desire from the users to have a central tool, definitely those questions will be answered in more details, but it's not a part of the current contract. Hope this is helpful.
Thanks, Eva. Keith?
Yeah, it's another question, because you've been talking about matching the timetables to the AVL data, which we've managed to do that. I was just wondering who takes responsibility for what are the real world practical issues of doing that, which are the availability of a communications network for the bus to send a signal to a central point to tell the network where it is, because comms doesn't cover the whole bus network. Who takes responsibility for the inaccuracy of GPS signals in the center of built up areas, where often the GPS address, the GPS location that's sent, due to the difficulties of kind of bounce and not getting able to get direct line of sight to satellites, could put the bus on a different street. I wonder who takes responsibility for that. And also, are there any plans to increase the frequency of the pings, which I think currently is 30 seconds? Because that will make it slightly easier to match. Because quite often what you're doing at the moment is matching a ping which is near a road with another ping that's near a road which is 30 seconds apart, which potentially could be a quarter of a mile apart, to a bus stop that doesn't move. So it is a physical, real world challenging issue, not just a data issue. So I'm just wondering who's taking responsibility for all of that stuff.
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning. So I think going into this, even at the legislation stage, it was kind of an understood limitation of the AVL is the fact that there needs to be the signal to send it, and that it will become quite obvious for certain operators that that is more or less difficult across certain routes in their areas. One thing we can say is what gets measured can actually get managed. So the fact that there's no buses in an area is an indicator that there is a signal issue. And that's where, you know, BODS can actually send that information, and that can be used in conjunction with other departments to kind of address issues like that there is no signal in a certain area, that actually people do live. You know, a bus runs there, people live there. So it's sort of, it's a limitation at the moment, but as something that could come out of BODS over time is that it could become probably quite clear where there is and isn't signal. You know, save up the AVL for a year or two and you'll soon start to see where the blind spots are. So yes, an understood limitation. I think there's some information in the standard about exactly how, you know, the Syria VM expects the information to be sent and to kind of what precision. So there is a kind of supplier kind of element to it that, you know, you've got to really be implementing it correctly and to the right kind of precision, and making sure that your instruments are kind of correctly, what's it called? Like, there's a word for it.
Calibrated.
Calibrated. Thank you very much. And then obviously the operator is ultimately responsible for the data. So there's also a realistic side of it. You know, it's not all that easy. Sometimes things go wrong, and it's something that through Bus Open Data we'll be able to improve on because we'll understand the problem more.
Okay, and maybe we'll be able to feed back to you some of the things we've already found from analysing data like that.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%, totally interested. Spencer, I do have one question for you. I might know the answer, but I'll ask you anyway. With this, are we welcoming people who aren't you and me and others who are we welcoming to contribute to this? Who can, create their own fork and merge back to main? What's the sort of protocol around that? Are we?
Yeah, so we're welcoming anyone and everyone. All suggestions are valid and will be kind of considered and talked about by the team. We're yet to have any external feature requests or bug reports on the GitHub, so that would be there's a race for that. That'd be amazing. There is a protocol, so you can anyone can kind of make a feature request or even fork the repo and take it in whatever direction they want. And if you do create a feature, you're welcome to kind of pull request it back into the main repository, kind of in a way suggesting that we incorporate your code into our code base, and we encourage that, and we have a review process. So some of our code reviewers, myself included, will take a look at it, and if it's if it's tested, if it tests well and we're happy with it, then we can and are happy to incorporate that into the main code base. So anyone from, if you're a university student just starting out with your tech skills and you've built a feature that makes that suits your use case and you'd like to see that in the main code base, or if you're more advanced and have suggestions into how to do something better or more efficiently, either way, we're more than happy to take a look and possibly incorporate that.
Yeah, a community resource. So yeah, contribute as you want as well.
Exactly. Cool. Is there anything anyone else wants to bring up before we wrap up? We've got about a minute left. Question in chat from Sharon. Sends a confirmation when a bus is at a bus stop with bus stop code. Do you mean their kind of confirmation when a bus has arrived at a bus stop, or is there something? Yeah. So that's quite an advanced feature, I think, and especially with the with what we discussed about kind of GPS instability. Sometimes it's not as, unfortunately, we've explored it. It's not as simple as just this bus stop has arrived, because you need to determine a certain amount of accuracy that is acceptable.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think that kind of type of information is kind of best represented probably in a prediction service or in a predictions feed. I think typically in the Siri family, it's Siri SM. So that would be more to what kind of Eva was speaking about earlier. There hasn't been a clear decision made whether that's going to be a central prediction service, or actually, hopefully everything's so great within the service that it's super easy for anyone who wants to create predictions to do their own. I don't think that's quite been decided yet. So very much hear the desire, the kind of, and I think TfL has very much encouraged it with their Siri SM. But yeah, that's definitely the vision and direction of travel, whether we do it or you do it.
Okay.
That's what we hope to get.
Yeah, the reason I asked was because if there was a BODS message when the bus stops anywhere, and then if there was an acknowledgement based on that long, that would be great. But at least if there was a message when the bus stops, we just know that it was stopping at that point. And I think just having that little flag that indicates that bus has stopped somewhere, even if it's not bus stop, that gives us some good idea about how much it's idling and where.
I believe there may be a vehicle speed.
There's a velocity, yeah, there's a velocity field,
Okay,
but obviously that is in association with the timestamp.
Right.
So just to, if that was
Yeah.
sort of 30 seconds ago, if you're really unlucky, then you know, it depends how far a bus can move.
Yeah, sure. No, that's fine. We'll talk more about it.
But this is where we, the whole service is going to mature over time, including the data standards, the expectations, and, the conversation I've had, albeit not very recently, about smart cities, they need to have a much higher frequency. So if that, at some point, I know that's a long way away potentially, there will be a need to increase to realize that use case.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for some context, I'm coming from an AI angle to this, and I think for us, maybe intelligent edge capability would have been great. But I think what I'm trying to say is what's the best we can extract with current infrastructure that we have. Yeah. All right. Thanks for that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're at time here. So I think we've had some great questions in. So thank you, everyone. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you, Ed, for wishing everyone a great weekend, and same to you. Do keep an eye out for your emails for updates from BODS overall and about the Python package, and look forward to seeing you on the next chat.